All right. Well, good late afternoon to everyone. Yeah, we got a good crowd here. So thank you for coming out. We got several different churches together. We got people coming from different places. So thank you for coming out. We timed it at 4 o'clock, so some of our older members would be able to drive home and it not be dark. So that's why we picked this time. I'm glad that it worked for you. So just tonight, Henok's going to present. He's going to present a little bit about the history of Christianity in Ethiopia, about the Mennonite Church in Ethiopia, and then there's going to be a time of question and answer. He and I, we actually don't know each other super well, but we first got in touch. He works at AMBS, where I'm finishing up seminary, and we got in touch with a project. They were raising some funds for some things that were happening in the church in Ethiopia. And then last summer, I was on campus, and I walked by his office, and I said hi, and this was great. Before I knew it, I was eating Ethiopian food with him at his desk, which I spent a couple years in West Africa, which it was just like very much like I remember of all of a sudden you're eating with somebody who you never met 5 minutes ago. So we were eating some really good injera. If you're going to be here at Midway tomorrow, the communion bread will be injera, so you get to try a little bit of Ethiopian. It's a flat bread that's got a sourdough, so you get to try that. But really, really appreciated the conversation we had with him. And then we've been trying to get him out here. Some leaders from the Ethiopian church were here. We thought about maybe him getting out here. It didn't quite work out. But he reached out to me a few weeks ago and said, I want to come. And I said, how about this week or next week? And he drove up from Elkhart this morning. He's going to be, if you're here from Midway, he'll be here preaching tomorrow. So thank you for going. This is not a short trip for you, so thanks for all the effort you went. And we're just really glad to have you here. So thanks, Henok, for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. Matthew, do you mind if you pray for us? Yeah, sure.
Heavenly Father, we just give thanks for so much, Lord, for the gifts that you give us every day, for the sun, the rain, the food that feeds us, for fellowship, for companions for this journey of discipleship, Lord, for a global church, Lord, that is diverse and captures some of the immensity of who you are, Lord, through your global church, Lord. And I just thank you that we get this opportunity to get a picture into what's happening in your church in a different part of the world. I thank you for what is happening there. I pray, Lord, that we can both find this interesting, but more than that we actually can learn from our brothers and sisters across the world, that they have a lot to teach us about what it means to follow you. And so, Lord, I thank you for the work that Henok is doing at AMBS and through the church in Ethiopia. I thank you for him coming here today, and I just pray that you would give us ears to hear and eyes to see what he has to share with us today. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. Thank you, Matthew. Well, thank you for having me. As you probably suspect by now, English is my third language, so bear with me. This is my 5th year being in U.S. Most of my life, probably almost all of my life. Okay. Yeah, I need help. I grew up in Ethiopia, so that's the whole me. So I'm trying to learn and to try to understand what's like to be a Mennonite and be Anabaptist Mennonite here in the U.S. So I'm in the journey. So there are so many up and down on the road. But I'm so glad that this worked out, that I can come out over here and share about the Christianity that I experienced, that I grew up with. Wait, the slide, here we go. I'm going to coordinate with him so that I might keep saying next from time to time. So probably this is not new thing for most of you, it's common knowledge. Even though from time to time I found myself people, just by virtue that when I say I'm from Ethiopia, oh, Africa, so I keep saying, no, Ethiopia is one country in the whole continent of Africa. So my experience, my upbringing, what I know is only from Ethiopia, that's it. And I never had the privilege of traveling across Africa to know a lot about it. So just to give you an idea, where it is in Horn of Africa, most of you are following our news, there's a lot of things going on with the Red Sea, all that, Djibouti, Eritrea there. So it's a quite interesting place where we find ourselves in. So I don't know, how many of you been in Ethiopia? Huh. 2 people, okay. So capital city, well, I should have taken out that one to check in the common language. Addis Ababa is a capital city, and I am from the southeast part of Nazareth. So that's where I born and grew up. So that's it. Next slide. Okay, now let's talk about the Christianity. There are 3 basic assumptions when Christianity came to being in Ethiopia. So this statement, by virtue, take away the idea of, when European came to Africa, for the whole, that's where the religion came in. No, it doesn't work for Ethiopia at all. Europe, first of all, Ethiopia never been colonized. In Africa, the only country who never been colonized is Ethiopia. So there's no such thing that the colonizers were there, they brought out their own version of Christianity, and they shoved it in the throat of the local people, and that's how. That's not going to work, at least for Ethiopia. But in Ethiopia, there are 3 understandings, strongly held assumptions, and there are some historical fact and archaeological fact how Christianity started in Ethiopia. I'm not going to spend most of the time each, but at least I will focus on the third one. Let me just go through. The first one is Christianity came to Ethiopia through Ethiopian, you read Acts, there's this interaction. So there's a lot of talk among people who say that's how it started to begin in Ethiopia. I don't want to spend much of time there because that's not my intention today. But the second one is also, Matthias in Act, there's that strong opinion also there that's Matthias is the one who brought Christianity to Ethiopia. The third one is what I'm interested in, because that's what takes me to the whole part of the history that I'm about to share. So bear with me. I might be going a lot of detail about historical facts. I don't know if I don't want to go to that, but I will go to a lot of historical narration, which that's what I wanted, because that's how it shaped the country, especially the third one. So Christianity didn't come from grassroots up. There's a story, next slide. There is this book, it's called Kabranagast. It's one of antique book in Ethiopia Orthodox Coptic Church. There is this story, it's a narration. It talks about, Queen of Sheba? You know her, right? So she heard about the Solomon, wisdom, when King Solomon was, ruling Israel. She heard about that. So she take a lot of, people, gift, all that to visit him. And she has also some riddles to check in his wisdom. So she went there, she spent time with him. She's such a nice-looking lady. So at the end of her visit, the story tells that he tricked her to sleep with him. Then when she went back to Ethiopia, she was pregnant. So Solomon, the first king of Ethiopia, Solomon, was born between Queen Sheba and King Solomon. No, Menelik, I'm sorry. Between Menelik was the son of Queen of Sheba and King Solomon. So the story goes, that when Melilik come to the age and start to learn about his father, so he visited Israel. He visited Israel, to see his dad. In his way back to Ethiopia, his dad gave him the Ark of Covenant. The Ark of Covenant, the Ten Commandments has the whole thing. So when you go to Ethiopia right now, today, if you go today to Ethiopia, in northern part, there is a church in the middle. You see that church middle? There is an assumption, a belief that I'm losing my thought. That Ark of Covenant stay there. And here's the trick part. Only one person for life been assigned to be there. So you're not going to visit it. You're not going to see it. So you will see the irony there. So I'm not saying that it's true, or I'm not saying it's false too also. I'm just saying there's a strong assumption that the Ark of Covenant exists in here, the middle. And there's only one person who can access it. And he will be assigned for life. When he dies, before he dies, he has to assign the next person who will be responsible to oversee that. It's really strong. So if you are having conversation with any Ethiopian Orthodox Church person and start criticizing this one, you might face a strong opinion. It doesn't matter whether it's true or not, but it shaped the country so much. Then what happened since then until 1974 was that repercussion of that. So there's a certain, by proxy, there's another, after this happened, after, Queen of Sheba went there, Menelik born, there is this historical fact. This one is for real. There's evidence and historical evidence as well. Is a coin that Izana in 4th century, he was a baby. So there were a ship going through the Red Sea, and there was 2 Assyrian Christians in that ship. So the ship wrecked. So they had to go to nearby. So the Ethiopians, back then we don't call it Ethiopian, Aksum, the Aksum kingdom, they took them as a slave. So out of this, there are 2 Assyrian Christians. One is, his name is Pharmitius. Pharmitius became a good teacher for Izana until Izana grew up. So by the time Izana became, mature to become a leader of the country, he was already Christian. So what happened was, you can imagine when the palace accept Christianity with the whole force of power, goes down to the people on the ground to accept Christianity. So that's what happened. So basically back then, to be part of the Aksumite kingdom, which we never be called Ethiopia, that means that you have to be Christian. Unless otherwise, you will not be considered as part of the kingdom. That kind of line of thinking started there. And this Solomonic dynasty came from there. Next. So fast forward, there are 2 years I want to make good remarks, especially 80, 89. This one is, in that Solomonic dynasty, pretty much from the inception of the beginning of the country until this time, all the leaders you have to be proven that by blood that you are from Solomon, that lineage. Unless otherwise, you're not leader at all. So from the very early on, the word Christendom, the marriage between state and church, from the very beginning, were there in the country. So, but in 89, Menelik II, this guy, for the first time, he had this idea of Ethiopian empire, which means that he wanted to expand the country from northern part to southern east. Back then, there was a lot of local community with their own ethnic, language, their own culture. It doesn't matter for him. For him, he sent the army to this old part of the country. So the idea is, one, it's a feudal system. One, you have to accept Christianity, which is Orthodox Church. Two, you have to learn Amharic, which is the language spoken by the northern part, which ended up becoming Amhara ethnic group. And you'll be given Amharic name as well. So whatever name you have, once you've been captured in that section of, part of Ethiopia, become incorporated to the bigger kingdom, the whole church, enterprise will exist. The church will be planted, the whole thing will there, and you will start having all kind of names. And there's a good explanation with it. So I'm trying to help. I think if I'm doing a good job, what I'm trying to show you is how the state is helping the church, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, and how Ethiopian Orthodox Church is helping the state so they can coexist together for a longer time. So the evangelical church started to emerge in Ethiopia early on in 1816. That's in Eritrea. So what happened is, this is interesting, especially compared to what happened in 16th century Europe with Martin Luther. There is so many parallels, even though the time is different. So in 1860, in Eritrea, in a Coptic church, there were deacons. They got access to a scripture that was written in their own local language. So they got the sense that this book was written for the people on the ground, not the people in the palace. So the book was the book of the people on the ground, not, so that realization started happening there. So that SIM with numerous missionary agency, they connected with them and they start, coming to the western part of Ethiopia, especially in the Wallagga area. So imagine in 1860, early on, that's what started happening. Then Haile Selassie came in. How many of you know Haile Selassie? Rastafarian. Have you heard about Rastafarian? Bombarle. Have you heard about Bombarle? Bombarle? By the way, Bombarle, I was telling him, there is a documentary in Amazon Prime. It's the title called Grandpa Was an Emperor. It's really nice documentary, well done. And there's a scene in that documentary, Bombarle helped to escape some of the royal family during the dark time, which I will explain later. But I'm trying to help you that how Bombarle also even connected with that. So it's a big deal. The Rastafarian is, the whole story. When Haile Selassie came to Jamaica was, there was not a lot of rain for a long time. As soon as he landed there, it started raining, and what Jamaican think, this must be, God sent. Or the other name will be like African Jesus. That they worship him. There is a city in Ethiopia called Shashamane that Haile Selassie gave it to Rastafarian. So literally they came from Jamaica to Ethiopia and reside there to worship him. So Haile Selassie is the last king of that Solomonic dynasty. He's the last one. There is this ambition. So he's such quite nice guy. By the way, this is where Mennonites start coming to the to see into Ethiopia as well. He had this strong desire for education. He likes education. He wants to modernize the country so that And the other part he did a really good job, like at the periphery, because it's a feudal system. Feudal system, and each have their own lord, have their own power. So he want to take off all the power and centralize it. So he systematically find a way not for the lords, all local areas, not to have that power and centralize it. And bring this idea of, modernization. And this is a time where World War II happened. But right after that, the whole, mission enterprise, well, especially Mennonite, they want to help, countries overseas. And then, Mennonites start coming to Ethiopia because that's the alternative, of course. The whole story about yours. As an alternative, because they don't want to go to military, they want to be somewhere in the church, national church, help out there. So when they start coming to Ethiopia, there is this policy from Haile Selassie King. There is a closed area and open area. Closed area means highly Amhara populated people with high Orthodox Coptic church. Tawahado Coptic church people, he said, don't go there. They're already Christian. So there's closed. They're not allowed to go there. But there is the open area. So by what he meant by that means there are Muslim, there are people there who doesn't believe. The infrastructure is not that much great. He said, oh, go those areas. So there, all this. How many of you know about Beyond Our Prayer, the book called Beyond Our Prayer? Okay, I don't want to make an assumption. All the names you will read on the Beyond Our Prayer book will be like a rural area. For me, I can, let alone for a Frenchie or a white guy from outside Ethiopia, even for my own Henok, I would not dare to go those places. It's so rural area. Yet he sent them there. Oh, they did. They did good job there. Next slide. Oh, I am way. Next slide. Communicating with you. Okay, this is a religious demography of, as you can see, the majority is Orthodox Christianity, and there's a lot of Muslim. Protestant is evangelical. It's a big category. There's a lot, like there's a Lutheran, Catholic, Maseret Christos, which is, our own Mennonite, included in it. In traditional belief, there's Roman Catholic and other. This is from 2012. Next. And this is what I was talking about, the closed and open area. I will bear with him. I will be bearing him too. So next slide. So this is what they did. This is the part where I'm really interested in. And especially, I wanted to compare what happened in 16th century Europe and what happened to Ethiopia as well. Like I said, in Europe in 16th century, there was a Latin, so they used Latin. Latin is a language that the common people don't understand. And one thing that Luther did was, he translated the Bible for the vernacular language, for the people who common ground to learn. The language that the common people understand. That's what they did as missionary. One thing they did is they established school. And they work on literacy, help people to start reading. And at the same time, they start working on translation, which is Ge'ez. Have you heard about Ge'ez? So Ge'ez is, if you got time, Google it at some point. Ge'ez is only the church people understand that language. G-E apostrophe E-S, Zim. Yeah. Only the people in the priests, the local people, the people who, clergy, the church, Orthodox church, they understand, they know what they're talking about. But people like me who go there, no idea what they're talking about. But it became like a civil religion, it's engraved to our being that going to church is a good thing to do. So you go there, there's no life, there's no that regenerative life, the changed life, but you go there, you do it anyway. So Ge'ez was one of the blocking. So what they did is they take it from Ge'ez to Amharic. Amharic is Amarinya is Amhara. There's Amhara ethnic group. So the Amharic is their language. If you remember in 1868 when I talk about Menelik II, one thing he did when he incorporated the other part of Ethiopia, what he helped the other people to understand Amharic. As much as makes annoying to invade others, other part of the community and discard their custom of way of life, their language, their livelihood, and incorporated, the culture of one ethnic group. But somehow, having one language helped the Mennonite. And they thought, okay, changing it to the Bible from Ge'ez to Amharic will help. And did, it helped. So they did a good job in that. So bear with me. So Mennonite didn't bring Christianity to Ethiopia. They didn't bring anything. They just created an opportunity, created a space for young people who were bored and looking for a way out, and politically speaking also, because there are so many marginalized and defranchised community who just, well, what else we can do? But when this happened, it's an alternative. So the growth of, look, a lot of people were asked like, wow, the number, by the way, Mikesi Church, Masarata Christos Church, now the number is close to 1 million, the statistics. So there are so many factors for that. But one of it is that political tension. People want to claim something what is dear to them and make that decision. Okay, it makes sense for me, this one, instead of being incorporated in this big, top-down religion. Next. Now, so when I came, like I said, they did a really good job. They established, they helped local people there to read, to understand the scripture, to make sense of it. What does that mean for them? All that. So there were a part where, Ethiopians are really stubborn, because a lot of Ethiopians proud of not being colonized, and we don't have in our blood system, all that, there is all kind of baggage in it. So when the time comes of the Mennonite, especially during the Derg time, I will talk about Derg time, this socialist, which is, I will talk about, before that happened, Mennonites want to go out, they want to go back to their own, of course, back to Ethiopia, back to US. So there was a discussion what to name the church. So these are the 6 alternative names was given for one of the meeting. Is it Masarata Christos Association, Masarata Christos Mennonite Association, Masarata Christos Mennonite Association, Masarata Christos Church, Masarata Christos Mennonite Church? You play all that. Then Ethiopians say, have you read the 1 Corinthians 3 from 11? Would be believed to be Simon's favorite verse. They said, Christ is the foundation of the church. And they said, we're going to go with the Masarata Christos Church. So Masarat means foundation. Christos means Christ. So the foundation is the Christ. So they pick a name that doesn't say anything about Masarata Mennonite. They were bold enough to say that. But they pick intentionally a name that's dear to them. And it makes sense for Ethiopians. And they said, this is, Meno Simon favorite verse. if like to make them happy. Next. So this is a repetition. Next. So here we go. Socialism. Socialism is, like I said, during Haile Selassie time. So a lot of people say in Ethiopia that Haile Selassie dig his own grave. Like I said earlier, he likes education. He wants to modernize the country. So he bring all young people, he send them to school. So as people start learning, they start realizing this feudal system that only privilege certain people. This all kind of lord all over the country, and the farmers doing the job, but there are a few people who are taking. There's a taxation, all that. So his own, there's a lot of stuff happening in Ethiopia. They talk about how Haile Selassie, empire come to collapse. Though it's funny that the leader of this socialism his name is Mengistu Haile Mariam. He is one of his own, Haile Selassie's own military major guard. He's the one who could take him, Haile Selassie, literally, and put him in jail. I really encourage you to watch that documentary I talked about. It talks the whole about this thing. So socialism, when it started at the very beginning, it was really nice. The idea was, everyone need to have equal access. There's no, Lord, all that, even to the point that until that point, women will not be sent to school. He said, no, even women need to go to school. It was really good. Once the socialism started, coming to the surface to Ethiopia, that Christendom that I told you about, that was being in the country from the very beginning, the marriage between church and state, that's where the divorce happened. For the first time in Ethiopian history, in 1974, the state became independent of the church. And that's where the Orthodox Church started complaining, because the whole privilege, all power, that access you will have, then all of a sudden, taken away. The whole idea of socialism. I don't want to, lecture you on socialism, all that. But even though it started with a good ambition, even the church people were happy. They were praising God for this. Then suddenly it started to change. Because the ideology is, there is this understanding, he thinks that, especially Mengistu Haile Mariam, the whole idea of socialism, he thinks that church is one of the place people are being indoctrinated for a certain view. And so that you'll be controlled by. So his justification was he wanted to free people from that. We don't need church. Because that's a place where you've been indoctrinated, be controlled, and certain people will have a privilege upon you. And literally a lot of evangelical church went underground. So there's no, you can't worship. You don't go to church unless you be arrested. That's where Mesereተ Christos start, the change in Mesereተ Christos happening, especially around this time. Before the change went to underground, there is a number, I put it. Next. So, the church, the socialist government took all the properties, everything being taken away. But, next. In 1982, before they changed to underground, the member of Mesereተ Christos Church was 5,000. When they came out of underground, in 1991, it grew to 50,000. God knows what happened. It's underground. You don't go to church. There's no such thing, go to church. But when that independence came in 1991, when the socialist government was overthrown and relatively more democratic government come to surface, that's where the church start appearing and having their own church. And when Massachusetts could start counting, that's the number. Came out. And the reason is, I don't know if you experience Ethiopia, like in Ethiopia, there's a coffee ceremony. By the way, the leadership the women did during underground is unspeakable. In Ethiopia, not in Ethiopia, a lot of African countries, women are powerful in their home. They're respected. Look, men can do whatever outside, but in the home, women are the one on top. And the other tradition, the other way of, like custom in Ethiopia, that Messiah Christos used it as a mechanism was drinking coffee. Like here in US, I'm sorry, I need to say carefully about this. No, like I remember like the first time I came here and somebody offered me coffee in his house. And I literally saw a mug with the coffee coming out from the kitchen. And like, where's the rest of, I want to see the rest of the coffee. Oh no, you can only drink from this mug in here. I was like, okay, I need to give you a background, why it was big deal for me. In Ethiopia, when someone asks you to drink a coffee, you have to set aside 3 hours. 3 hours, literally. If your neighbor asks you to come over for coffee, what they meant is you have to be there for 3 hours, even more than that. You will see the whole process from very beginning of like when the women, like I said, women are really powerful in their house. They wash the coffee in front of you. They roast it in front of you. When all these things happening, you are in conversation. There's all kind of things happening. People talk, dialogue, all that. They roast it in front of you. They put it, everything you will see literally there. And that's what you feel, oh, I drink coffee. It's not like mug, which I'm fine with that. I mean, I'm not saying anything. But that was a shock for me. I was like, wow, there's that part of ceremony was not there. It's just that the product was here. It's like, okay. So what they did was, the socialist government, they can't stop the coffee ceremony. So the MKC Church, this idea of cell group came to be. Said, okay. So by the way, there's interesting story that I'm learning recently very much. When the socialist government started, appearing in the country, there were 5 leaders from Ethiopia, MKC, being sent to Soviet USSR to learn how the church survived there. And ended up they didn't bring anything. Well, there was a whole story that I'm learning. But it's funny that this cell group idea was designed by women. That, depending on your local neighborhood, they know each other, they will call each other for a coffee. And usually men are being searched. Women, no one would search them. So they will hide their Bible and they go, bunna, which bunna is coffee. Drink bunna. And they will have a Bible study together. If the spy, for whatever reason, appear, they will change the tone and they will do something else. That whole mechanism, which still there is a lot to be learned, would happen because of men, but women. And there's an interesting article that somebody gave me access to in Goshen College, that this guy did he did an interview of this woman who did the whole thing. And I'm still going through that. But I'm just trying to share with you that it's beyond, like you can't comprehend what happened during underground. And the surprise for a lot of people when 1991, when the church is free, when they start counting, and now people are interested in what happened there. Okay. Next. So this is from 2022 statistics. So earlier I referred to like close to 1 million. Now I'm hearing that one. This is from 2022, it was like 700,000 baptized, unbaptized, and children, including children. But now it's close to 1 million. What's the reason? Like I tried to refer to earlier the reason behind why this grows. Like I said, I referred to political, that part. There is that tension. And the second one is, this one is really interesting. In Ethiopia, when you go out and share gospel for someone, within a week or two, no one will give him, assign him, but automatically that person will assume some form of leadership. It's funny, recently I heard from the head office, Mr. Texas, the way they frame it is, they're trying to keep up with the people who are doing the work on the ground. Rather than, helping and setting aside for people, to do the evangelism or to share the gospel, they are doing it. The people, like the member by default, they have within them this unspeakable desire to share. So what they're dealing with in the head office, with the one who's dealing, is a phone call from this rural area or from somewhere. So we know we are 50 now, we're 25. We need a place. We need to find a way to structure. Can you build us a church? That's the kind of call they're receiving. So there is this lay leadership that they don't even have like a formal training. Like I said, within 2 or 3 weeks of them being part of the community and enjoying that, then you will hear a story of that person starting something somewhere. Oh, so 5 of us are starting Bible study in this house, and we might grow up to this, but we need some structure around here. So the church is trying to keep up with the work, the ground. So that's unspeakable. And the other one is reliance on Holy Spirit. I don't know how to explain this one. But let me tell you this interesting. I got the privilege to go around, around U.S. with the 2 leaders when they were visiting. Unfortunately, we were supposed to be here, and at some point, something happened and we canceled the whole thing. But the funny part is when I'm hearing from them again and again from in different events, the way they frame it is, I understand. I live in the U.S. for probably the 5th year, so I understand the question why people are trying to like they want to see strategy. What you guys are doing, for this. And sometimes, the way they respond is annoying and blunt. We just pray. Like, don't just say, explain more. So, like, what else I need to say? We just rely on Holy Spirit, and we want the church be led by the Spirit, and we cry out for God. And like I said earlier, the lay people are the one who's doing the work. We're trying to keep up with them. So they don't have even the way to explain that. They said, well, I don't know if it is a reason. One thing we can do is we just pray. So, I don't know. It's one thing I missed here in the U.S. Back home, when I was there is this, Tell me if I need to stop. There's this prayer warrior. There's a chain of that. So you will get a phone call in the middle of the night. To pray. And sometimes they will call out for the whole congregation overnight fasting. I was like, when I was there, I didn't even question it. It was like, but now when I'm thinking about it, I was like, what we are doing there, like, we do this. So you go to church not only Sunday, there are so much activity, oh my God. And I feel like that part that I missed a lot. That communal prayer, private prayer, being led by the church. The church is the one who's leading it. Next slide. This is an interesting chart. If you pay attention, I never heard a calling here in the U.S. evangelist. But at MK College, MK Seminary, MK Church, Masarata Texas Church, evangelist is one of the calling. And we have, this is from 2022, close to 963. Not only there, do you see 1 year for Christ? This church. 1 year for Christ. This is a time where you check on your, you will say, especially when in seminary or university, you are about to go to your own career. But at some point along the way, you might feel this desire. And you might check with your pastors, and I think I have this desire, I don't know for sure. And the pastor will say, why don't you try 1 year for Christ? That's the year you try that pastoral work or the whole thing to see if you're still with that. If not, I'm so glad that. You will make a decision. And this is from 2012, 2022, and that number is growing. People trying to check in, what's this? I have this thing, me. And you see the missionary? By the way, not only locally, now they're trying to, if you remember, I showed you the map. They're trying to go out of Ethiopia to Sudan, to neighboring countries. That there's that vision. Next, I'm trying to wrap it up. So this is a structure. I need to be careful here also. There's a head office led by the president. Then there's a executive committee and general assembly. But within the church, for that church, the church has 3 arms. The seminary that I'm working with, this is the seminary that I graduated. This is the development work. They're working with the MECCs, especially. And there are 8 departments under the provision of the head office. And these 8 departments have their own. But the way it's structured is the head office there's a conference, just Katana, we call it, in each region, part of the region. Then there's an office in local church and church planting center. The thing we're trying to explain here is anything that whispered in the head office automatically will be there. And from anything that been talked about in the local church, automatically will channel up to the head office. There is this, I know what you're thinking. There is it's not top-down leadership at all. This is a place this is the area that I'm still thinking about to find a word for it. That this trust that they build on this structure of having their leadership appointed by God have this responsibility. There's a word in English. It's a two-way street. And I used to think that this is more like top down, but I start appreciating it now. After living here for most of my 5 years, I guess now. But I'm not, like I said, I'm not making any judgment or concluding anything. It's just that like I'm starting appreciating the value of it, having that kind of structure. One thing that I help the church when they came here is, so you know, in Ethiopia, when you say Mennonite Christos, you know you are talking about one entity throughout the country. So careful when you come to US. There are this reality. I mean, I'm not judging anything. I mean, I'm just trying to help. That's my job. This is the reality. They have their own. So don't assume with that mindset when you interact with your own brother and sister here. The last slide. The challenge. And this is where I come to my work here at AMBS. Like I said, the number is growing. A lot. Like I said, it's close to 1 million now. So there was a desire. There was so many factors why we have set up this kind of way. One is people like me, you know, Henok, you know, this great country, you know, US, you know, we come here and to training. But back then we would say, oh yeah, I went to go to US, you know, to train. So I'll go back home and help the church. That was the promise you make. But once you are here, you see the whole this deal in US. I said, oh boy, this is something else. Then something like there was like so many cases after case. The church they want to strengthen their muscle with, you know, sending people with proper training, you know, formal structure. But that, you know, have you heard brain drain? Word, there's a lot. So when this proposal came in, it was appealing for them. So we don't send people, yeah. They can continue their ministry here. They can continue helping the church. But at the same time, they will be trained. So that was really appealing, the proposal. The second one was, I was telling for Matt earlier, the realization that Mennonite Christos is Mennonite Church is not, like it will come very late to you. Like you go to church, you don't think for a second that you're Mennonite or Baptist. You go to church. But only a few folks, fortunate people like me, who had the time to go to proper like college, try to learn about the history. Oh, this is how the church came to be, and this is our connection, and this is the connection. Oh, Mennonite believe this, and we have this belief. So you make that connection. That realization comes later. One thing that really like fascinated me when I heard it in the US is church market. That people do thorough checking before they join the church. At first I was like, oh my goodness, how you do the market? Like you don't go to shop, like you go to shopping to pay. You can't do the shopping church. But later on I said, oh, maybe you're right. I do need to do the shopping. But it was shocking to hear when I heard about it for the first time. But in Ethiopia, it's not. Like you can go anytime in Ethiopia, any Sunday service, any Mennonite Christos church, you might find a pastor or a guest speaker from other denominations speaking, from full gospel. I'm not saying that, oh, you don't mind about their identity. No. But that is not that much tied the way it is here. They're losing up and said, oh, yeah, we all brother and sister. We have this understanding and belief. So part of the reason why this partnership started happening was, okay, you keep saying about that, about Mennonite, Anabaptist identity, all that. Like, let's have that from somewhere. And especially in a way that we can start seeing what is here, what we are practicing here, in connection with what's out there. What's the parallel here? So so for the Messianic soul's journey of defining herself, for identity sake, I said, this proposal was appealing. And I was fortunate enough, I was at MBS when this discussion was happening, and they dragged me from my apartment, and I started as, being a TA, teaching assistant. Then it evolved to, when I graduated, it became a full-time job. So basically what I'm doing right now is, so I work closely with MEK Seminary, the seminary branch of the church. So the seminary is owned by the church back home, back in Ethiopia. So I will coordinate with them, and they will give us a list of who are the people who will be joining the program. So I will closely work with them, and I will help them navigate through the admission process here, all the things that need to be, higher theological education, their own culture. So my work is both sides. One, I'm helping the student what's like to have, a person as an instructor that you don't have any connection from other part of the world. But also turning to the professor, what's like to have a student from other part of the world who have their own experience and wisdom, what's like to teach them. So that kind of back and forth so I do a lot of teaching assistant. TA is my big portion of my job. But there are some administrative work, intercultural, so that the administration here will have the same page with the administration there. That kind of work, I do that. I need to stop. And I need to open up. I know I'm just sending you a lot of information, but.
Ron, is this, okay, Henok, thank you. This is, I know I have so many questions, so many things I would love to go deeper. I know we don't have time for that. I'm glad I get to eat supper with you tonight. But I do want to let folks here, we have time for a few questions. Yeah, I'll just open it up. I can come with the mic, and you can just stay up here, Henok, and then.
I noticed on that last slide, one of the blocks talked about the political unrest.
Oh, yeah.
And I just wondered more about that, how that's affecting the church.
Yeah. That's interesting. I'm so glad you pointed that out. In fact, that's how I connected with Matthew. So, I don't know if you are following up the news, but of course now Ukraine and Russia are taking over now, Gaza, all kinds of things happening. So you might not see, but there were, especially during the COVID time, there was a war, kind of civil war in Ethiopia, even though I don't call it that way. But the idea was the northern part of regional government, especially the Tigray, and the central government, which is like runs the country, they were not in a good shape. I don't want to, I thought about including it. There is, after socialism, there was this Tigray. Usually the way it works in Ethiopia is politics is so, we have 80 ethnic groups, 80 ethnic groups. Each of them, they have their own culture, custom, way of doing, their own language. It's so hard, especially when, after the socialism in 1991, when the relatively, democratic, government came to being, one thing that former government did was to help each, ethnic group to have their own identity, their own being, to function with their own language. It was good. was really good, but ended up being the ruling, like that from 1991 until 2018, it was run by a Tigrayan group from one specific ethnic group. The other, like for example, here you have Democrat, Republican, whole scenario. But in Ethiopia, when they run for office, they run it representing ethnic group. It's really hard even to pick, because of course, they're claiming their own community. Then which one you would choose? And you say, okay, if I choose this, of course, he will do good thing for his own. What about the rest? So the whole system is messy in Ethiopia. It's like it has to come up with some own neutral ground of forming a party so they can run for office, so they can serve the country. So from 1991 until 2018, it was from one particular ethnic group who would run the whole show. Divide and conquer, whole thing happened there. Everything. So in 2018, there was civil upheaval, all that, and of course, that part taking over, and the new leadership come to place, which are relatively more mixture from different ethnic group. But still, you always see president. Who is this president? Yeah, from Oromo, from one ethnic group. So there's that, by association, people. But what happened was, since the ethnic group from Tigray been in the country for so long, they have so many power, they were not happy that, this happened. So that animosity between the central government and the ethnic group from that Tigray starts from there. That pride, all that, because now you have a new government, then you will criticize what happened in the past, so that kind of fuel to that tension. But the other thing is, between that time, I don't know, I don't want to call it anything. Each regional region have their own army. Like they have set up, they can just claim that they are independent of the rest of the country. That divide and conquer strategy was set them up really good well. That they have their own president, finance, everything, you name it. So when this animosity start, they have everything. They have it, the gun, everything that you need. So they literally start the war with the national army. And that's during which we, MKC, have 6-7 church around that region, that the church was struggling. That I sent out announcement at AMBS. We were helping. And that Matthew somehow accessed, because he was an MBS student. And that's how the connection with him started there. So, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I'm just sharing that the way we form our politics is a little bit messy. And the way we form our party is so messy, it's always one ethnic group. Now having your own time and avenging the others, all that messy. So still relatively peaceful, but there's a tension. Still, the country.
So we here in the United States hear that Ethiopia is one of the most, where Christians are persecuted the most. Is that correct? I mean, I don't hear you talking a lot about that, but.
Can you be a little bit specific? Is it during socialism time or now?
Now.
Oh, okay. The way I respond to that is, there are so many persecution in different parts of the region. So those usually, persecution happen by virtue of ethnicity, not by Christianity. But if you are Christian, of course. And the other thing is, there are certain regions, especially in the Oromia region, a lot of MKC members are there. And a lot of persecution happening there. But the persecution is not happening because of their faith. It's more of this ethnic tension. And of course, people live there, and then, of course, that will happen. And the church will say, okay, this is how people been affected. But what I'm trying to, I never heard of a time, I never heard from anyone of all this persecution happening in Ethiopia right now has to do with the faith. It has to do more of this political tension with ethnic tension. And then wherever you are, if you are that, if you're not, if you just happen to be the leader in the White House, whatever you call it, in Ethiopia we call it Beta Mangist, is not representing you, then that committee will always suffer. So I would have been more, inclined to say yes during socialism time, the whole persecution happened because of their faith. But now it's not with that. It's more of with the ethnic tension, what people identify themselves to.
Thanks for nuancing. This is why it's so helpful to have someone to talk about these. Yeah. I want to just see if I've got a question I can ask, but I'm going to have time to ask Henok. Yeah.
You mentioned there being around 80 different ethnic groups in the country. How uniform is the church? Is there, is it kind of split up, or do people worship together amongst the different ethnic groups, or how split up is that, or how fractured is that?
Yeah. One thing I missed, I should have put it in the slide. In 1991, when the relatively democratic government come to be and divide and rule come to place, one thing that former government did was, like in Ethiopia, we know where Amara live, we know where Oromo live, we know where Walaita live. There are certain region for them. Even the region was all based on that ethnic. So when you plant a church in one region, automatically you will find a lot of that ethnic background from there, by virtue. You're not saying, oh, you have to come from here to worship. You can't say that. You just plant a church, you go everywhere and start a church. From that region, people start coming. Then you might see the demography like, oh, there's a lot of Oromo, one Amara there. Or you can see in Amara, there's a lot of Amara, there's only one Oromo. Because that's the way that the church, the country was set up. So I'm just giving you like a snapshot that how hard it is even to start a church. And by default, you will have a majority member from one ethnic group. The other one is, I tried to allude to this one in my presentation. Like I said, since usually that Christendom, the marriage between church and state, and that, by forceful to accept Orthodox Church, that Christianity, especially not only that, with that there is Amhara's culture you have to accept, Amarinya that you have to speak, the change name, all that animosity already there. So almost other ethnic group feel like, okay, so there is this demographic that I recently found out is that in most of Oromia, or southern part, there's a lot of Mr. Christos church members. And why is that? Well, they're making political gesture that we're not belong to that dominant or whatever. This is an alternative for me. So I'm giving you a snapshot of one, how the country is set up, which is there is a lot of ethnic group in different. And when we start church, we just started there. And by default, you will have a lot of people from one. And the second one is because of that marriage between church and state for so long, there are so many animosity, there is anger within people. They said, I don't want to be part of this, I want to be part of this. And that also will change demography. So I think that's how I can respond to the questions.
Why don't I open up for one more question? And also, I'm sure Henok will stick around a little bit, so I'm sure you have some time. That way I can let people that need to leave go. But one last question. Would you be willing to stick around just a little bit in case people...
I'm yours.
All right, so, but I will...
He's feeding me, so I have to say yes.
I'll go ahead and ask the question. I'm just interested, so I'm sure there's lots that was happening. 1982 to 1992, this coffee for 3 hours. Do you have any sense of kind of obviously there's lots of conversations, I'm sure, depending on the relationship. What was discussed? Do you have 3 hours to discuss? Do you have a sense of kind of how that was done?
So usually, the information passed on from generation to generation in Ethiopia, usually orally. People communicate among neighborhood, or that especially coffee ceremony is one of the place you talk about politics, social life, everything. You talk about everything. That's a place you have to be there, unless you feel like out of place. That's where you can get information, fresh information, and what's happening in the neighborhood, what's happening in the country. Even though things now changing now with this modernization and there's TV, internet, and all that, there's another alternative. But back then, but still now, most of rural area, coffee ceremony is, oh my goodness, it's like, that's why even the socialism government didn't even dare to touch it. It's ingrained within the community. That's the only way they can communicate with their neighbors and talk about stuff. And that's how the MKC found out, we can use this. We can use this. And just change it to discussion, like Bible study. So you're allowed to talk. Of course, you'll be censored to how far you will talk about politics, all that, because I've been told, I've never been there, so I've been told there was spies everywhere. So you have to be careful. So women usually carry the Bible inside here and they just walk. And they're not, usually only men are being searched and checked. Where are you going? What are you doing this time, this hour? Women usually don't, because the social government somehow favors equality, that sense of equality, that women need to be on board as well. That impulse is there. And also there's that realization that women are powerful in their home. So in that 3 or 4 hour long time when you see the whole process, you talk about everything. You talk about the school, what happened. You can gossip. Yeah, it's all kind of things happening there. But the church used that and use it for this purpose. And that number that I showed you before they went to underground and after came to be because of that cell group they formed, intentionally designed it based on where you live, your location. They have all this in the list where each people live, and they form that. Of course, there are times, people are asking about ethical questions. So you lie. Yeah, people lie. So a lot of people bound now, they will say, well, you don't know what it's like to be living there under that. Now you live this more, so you're ethical questions all about this. I mean, I understand, that's a valid question to ask, but also the recognition that what kind of mess they were in and how they find the way out of that. So, yeah, you talk everything.
Thank you so much, Henok. Again, Henok will stick around for a little bit if you want to ask him some questions, but just thank you for sharing with us. I feel like this is really, really rich. So,
thank you very much.
We'll look forward to tomorrow.
Thank you. I can give you this one.